I mean, we should have expected this type of crowd from Mary Fitzgibbons.
Oh,
she's amazing. So she's got all the groupies out tonight. So thank you guys for coming. Thanks for being here. And sorry for like the cramped spaces. Obviously, we were planning on being outside, but God did not cooperate. So it's all good. Sorry, it's a little toasty in here. The air conditioning is trying to work its best. Anyhow, yeah. So this summer we've kind of. We did the Q&A the first session, and then with Father Gary, and then this session and the next session have a little bit of a connection to mercy, since we're in the year of mercy. So tonight's topic is forgiveness. The exact title is Forgiveness from a Psychological Viewpoint. And so Mary is, I'm going to let her introduce herself, but a couple things I want to say about Mary is that, one, she's just an amazing gift to our community. She's not only here every Sunday and just a valued community member, but for as long as I've been here, she's worked with our internship program, doing formation with them, doing emotional and psychological work with them to help them grow into the best people they can be. And that program is a leadership formation program as they're serving our community. And so Mary is a huge, huge aspect of that leadership formation, and anyone who's been an intern here will attest to that. And every year we always evaluate at the end of the year with the interns how things went, what went well, what could have gone better. And usually one of the top-rated things for their experience are the meetings that they had with Mary throughout the year. So her wisdom is just. Yeah, we've just been blessed to be a part of and grow from her wisdom in so many different ways, not only as a staff and as a community, but many of the individuals. So tonight's topic is really kind of coming from that point of knowing that like Mary has a lot of wisdom working with people, and I'll let her tell you more about her professional background and how she's picked up that wisdom over the years and become such a wisdom figure in so many people's lives. So. Without further ado, a couple housekeeping things actually. There's some beer and other drinks out there. There's bathrooms just past that room. Yeah, feel free to get up during it. I know it's a cramped space, but anything, we'll probably have Q&A at the end.
Yes, yeah. And in fact, if there are any questions as we're going through the talk, I don't have a problem with you asking. So I'd like to make, I'm really pretty impressed with the crowd. So I'd like to tell you that if you, I want to make this really as informal as we can. And I said, if there's any questions, I don't mind having these discussions, but certainly I'd really appreciate maybe questions after, certainly after the talk. Okay, let's talk about the fact that about a month ago, did Troy run away?
He did.
Yeah, well, he ought to run away because about a month ago he said, about a month and a half ago he said, Mary, would you give a talk on forgiveness? And I'm looking at him thinking, what are you talking about? Why would I give a talk on forgiveness? And so I tried to avoid him. And he kept coming back, and Father Gary kept coming back. And then I had to realize these guys are really serious about this. And so then I had the decision of, do I want to do this or not? And something said to me that, I'll tell you what something said, I couldn't say no. I didn't want to say yes, but I couldn't say no. And I began to realize as the month was going on, I was thinking about this more and more, there was probably a good reason why I couldn't say no, because I really have a belief that sometimes these things that you're made to do or you're asked to do and you don't maybe really want to do them, or maybe for our own good, and maybe sometimes that's a little grace coming into our lives. The reason why I wasn't, yes, can you hear me?
I think it's the perfect day to do this. Because I'm overwhelmed with the news in Europe.
Yes.
And so talking about forgiveness today, if it hadn't been this, I would have stayed home in a fetal position and please don't scare me anymore. But it's perfect to talk about forgiveness today.
And I'm so sorry for that. So for me, this talk is really an act of humility. because I really want to tell you, who in the world am I to be talking to any one of you about forgiveness? The only thing that allows me to do this is that I do have some background, and that's why this was sort of, David said at Mass, from a Catholic point of view. Well, I'm not going to be presumptuous enough to say I'm going to give you the Catholic point of view. I'll let Father Gary or Pope Francis do that. But I am going to look at this from a psychological point of view. And what allows me to do that is that I've been doing therapy a lot of years, probably about 35 years now, and it's something I love. And it's something that I probably years ago should have retired, but I won't. And I won't because I find doing therapy is life-giving, and it is also still, for me, a real learning situation. I'm always still learning. And what happens is when you're forced to look at something like this, forced to look at something and just thinking, wow, this is a tough topic, what happens is that you have to go inside yourself, and certainly outside, looking at outside resources, but to say, how does this make sense to me? And even if I haven't made total sense of it before, I attempt to make a little bit more sense of it now. So, as we do this, I want you to think about someone in your life with whom you found it very hard to forgive. I want you to think about this person, and as we talk, and as I talk about different concepts, I want you to apply those concepts to the relationship that you have with this person. Someone said, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. And I think that is an incredibly profound statement. It's not necessarily that the other person deserves the forgiveness, but we deserve the peace. As I said, this is taken from a psychological point of view, but this is what I also want to say to you. I think good psychology is good spirituality, and vice versa. And I've always found that to be. In all these years, I've never found spirituality, I've never found Catholicism, really, to be in real conflict with good psychology. We're told to forgive 70 times 7, but we find it extremely difficult to forgive. And I think we have to be really honest with ourselves. This is a difficult act. It comes to us as though we're just good enough, we would be able to forgive. We try to think about the fact that, you know, if I were really a good person, I'd be able to do this. We're told to forgive 70 times 7. Well, that should be easy, but it's not. We may find ourselves saying the words, but deep within us, we know we really haven't forgiven. And when that happens, oftentimes we want to do it, it doesn't come to us, and we feel the guilt that surrounds it. There must be something wrong with me that I can't do this. I can't let go of my anger. I can't let go of my hurt with that other person. On the other hand, we have a lot of other different kinds of feelings. We worry sometimes that if we forgive the other person, we're either going to condone their behavior or we let them off the hook. So we're really frightened that, you know, in a way, if I forgive that person, they get away with it. But think about the resentment we're still having. Or we're angry with it. We want the other to at least acknowledge that what they did to us truly, truly hurt us. But you know what our greatest fear is? The greatest fear is that if we forgive and let it go, we give that other person the potential to hurt us again. And that's what we're all afraid of. We're afraid of being hurt. So let's just look at this concept of forgiveness. The meaning of forgiveness is to release. And it's generally defined as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of anger, resentment, or vengeance inward to someone who has perceived or harmed us. We are capable of forgiving even if the offender doesn't feel remorse for his behavior or doesn't ask for forgiveness. However, this is a very difficult process. What makes this so difficult? You know what makes it so hard for us? Generally, it's because it's the woundedness. You know what woundedness means? It means that the pain is at the very core of us. Therefore, the greater the woundedness, the more difficult time we have in forgiving. And I want you, as I'm talking about this, I want you to feel what it feels like when you feel wounded. And I also want you to think about what kinds of things actually make you feel wounded. This is what I'm going to tell you, and I don't know whether all of you are going to agree with me, but I have really come to believe this. Most often, our woundedness comes from very early years, and I'm going to tell you, I think they come from probably the first couple of years of life. I'll tell you what, I came out of a grad school program at St. Louis U, ever having learned this, but over the years, I've come to really realize that those first 2-3 years of life are critical to us. And in fact, I would tell you that most of the issues that I deal with in the office with adults are going back to those first few years. And so why do I say that woundedness comes from early childhood? So let me give you an example. If in the infancy there was not a good enough nurturing, or in some cases, maybe mother or father, but mother, let's say, was maybe held on to that child, didn't quite let that child go, meaning that they're maybe almost too smothering, we will tend to have abandonment issues. So if there's not enough nurturing, or maybe too much, but what will happen is it eventually affects into abandonment issues. So therefore, it may be harder for us to handle a lost relationship than someone who doesn't have abandonment issues. So if I have abandonment issues, that woundedness is going to be much greater when I have lost that relationship. Or for example, if a person with whom you have a close relationship starts pulling away from you and leaves you, those abandonment issues may have a seriously painful effect on you. And sometimes what happens oftentimes is with abandonment issues, where we're going to see in adulthood, we're going to see depression and we're going to see anxiety. I don't think we get by in life, and I've really come to believe this, having those early childhood issues and not having having an effect somehow as an adult. Or if, as a child, you experience an abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, you may be much more vulnerable to the feelings of abuse as the adult. Therefore, the deeper the feelings of abuse, the more difficult we have in forgiving. So again, go back. The greater the woundedness, the more difficult we have when we're attempting to forgive. The other reason why this topic makes it really, it's really tough to forgive. One reason is that the person perhaps who probably harmed us when we were younger, the person we're wanting forgiveness from, may no longer be alive. So I have a lot of people come in and say, you know what, how can I be angry with my father? Certainly he did all of those horrible things, but he's not alive, so what do I do? Well, I'm going to tell you, you got a lot of unfinished business. And I am really going to say to you that you've got to work that through, and we're going to talk in a little while about how we work that through. Or the other one that's even more confounding is my mother, my father, or this person in my life was horrible to me as a child. But now, as I'm the adult, this person who has grown older has mellowed. And we've seen that a lot, where perhaps we had a parent who was very difficult for us in early childhood. But then what happens is as we age, they mellow. So the person that we want to confront today is not the person, who really did the harm to us. And so again, the thinking is, well, that's not who he is now, or not who she is now. But the work still hasn't been finished, because what we're looking at, the work goes back to the child who was harmed. It's not the adult. We're dealing with the childhood issues. And again, I'm going to tell you, I don't think we easily get to adulthood without dealing with those childhood issues. Also, another reason why it's difficult is that the more problematic the situation is, in which, again, a child, we may have been taught that being angry wasn't acceptable. So, what happens oftentimes is that a lot of us were taught that. Maybe not necessarily me. I came from a family where anger was just really always out there. But so many of our families, and certainly done in all good spirit. Let's put the anger away. It's not really acceptable. We're much better people when we don't get angry. Well, the problem is, again, you're going to pay for that. And because we don't confront those issues. And you know what? Eventually, forgiveness involves confronting the issue in some way. And with that comes anger. So we're admonished to forgive and put the angry feelings away. And what happens is we avoid the angry feelings at all costs. They're frightening to us. but as I said, we pay a price. The problem is that we develop into adults who learn not to acknowledge unpleasant feelings, but in the long run, we may end up in depression or anxiety, and I'm going to say not may, probably will. There's going to be some depression, there's going to be some anxiety when you deny your feelings. That's a luxury you can't afford. I had a young guy in the other day, not young, he's in his early 30s, but I've been seeing this guy because there are a lot of family issues, and he attempted suicide twice in his teens. So I've been seeing him since he's probably been about 16. He said he's late 30s now, and he has a strong relationship with a woman, and they have 4 children between the two of them. And he's a good guy. And we were talking about the fact that he can sometimes be really, really harsh on the children and on his partner. And he said, you know, I'm knowing it's not them. So we started talking about, I knew the situation when he was growing up. Father was very emotionally abusive, very verbally abusive, and he said, he was sitting in my office crying, and he said, I don't remember a day that my father didn't say horrible things to me, or that he wasn't angry, or that we weren't frightened to come home. And so I said, you know, well, what do you feel about that now? Well, he said, I have to put those feelings away. He said, I don't want to think about it. When I think about that, I just put those feelings away. Can you see what he's doing? Oh yeah, he's putting them away. But what he's doing, he's taking them out on his children and his partner. And so we talked, and I said, you know what, we've got to get back to this. And again, there's great fear at directing these feelings towards his father, for lots of reasons. Most of us find ourselves either in the denial camp of feelings and our anger, or we become a victim to the injustices where we hold on then to our resentments. The problem is the victimization becomes our identity. So I generally find people in two areas. They're either denying their feelings or they won't let go of the resentments, and what happens is they become a victim. Unfortunately, for lots of people, what will happen is that victimhood becomes their identity. They're eventually just wounded objects. They become eternally wounded objects. If you've met people like that, they can't let it go. And they could become, in fact, very comfortable with their victimhood. Both denial and holding on to the resentment seem to be the easiest way to deal with the problem. It is the easiest way. If I deny it, I don't want to deal with it. If I'm the victim, I'm always spewing all my anger and everything out, but I don't deal with it. So what do we have to do? We have to address it. And that's much harder. So if we look at resentment, it is a feeling of displeasure or indignation that stems from an incident, real or perceived, that is hurtful. And I think it's really interesting we talk about the fact that it could be real, but that resentment could be a perceived hurt. It may not even be a real hurt. In other words, the person that we're angry with may have never meant to intentionally hurt us. When you resent someone, it will color all your future interactions, no matter how trivial. And so, especially with that person, and sometimes it extends to others too. So resentment can be open or concealed, immediate or delayed. Open, it's right there, we see it. Immediate, you feel it immediately. Delayed, that really means that you don't feel your feelings right away. What happens is it may take you hours, it may take you weeks to really realize, oh my God, I really was upset. Why would that person say that? Well, this sort of hurt my feelings, but it doesn't come immediately. And then we said also concealed resentment. Often resentment will fester long after the apologies are exchanged and all is superficially forgiven. The concealed resentment poses a danger to our happiness and to our serenity. It's all about the lack of peace and serenity. So the 3 most common signs of concealed resentment are distrust. In other words, my resentment is concealed. How do I feel about this person? Well, I feel like I can't trust them. or we question their motives. How do I really know that what she's saying to me is